You're listening to Thrive, where every week we have meaningful conversations with incredible women like you, packed with practical tips and sisterly advice to bring you from a life of simply surviving to thriving. We're shaking the story that you're just getting by and stepping into who God made you to be. Because it's not enough to simply survive, you deserve to thrive. I'm your host, Erica Gwynn, and I'm ready to thrive together. Here's today's episode. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Thrive. Ever wonder what it would be like to just do it all yourself? Nix the drama of the public school systems and call the shots for your kids from the comfort of your own home? Cut the crap with the food industry and cultivate a healthier, more holistic livelihood with your own farm fresh eggs or dairy milk on your own little homestead? Maybe the thought of homeschooling or homesteading gives you hives, and maybe you've heard the words, but don't really know much about either. And that's where today's episode comes in. Shelbey Kendall is a homeschooling, homesteading mom and author, and she's giving us the greatest inside look at both words in her world and how her mind was changed and she got started as someone who once couldn't imagine being that mom to homeschool. Hey, Shelby, welcome to Thrive. I'm so happy to have you.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Yay. Okay. I know a little bit of your story just from doing my due diligence and stalking you on the internet, as one does. But tell everybody what is your story? Because you've kind of made a name for yourself and are making a name for yourself for homeschooling, for homesteading, for writing books, all this good stuff. We love to see it, but I want you to shine your light on yourself and tell us your story.
Yeah, so I became a mom when I was really young. I was 21 when I had my first child.
Ooh.
And it kind of was very overwhelming at first. And we had 3 kids within 6 years. And so I was just home and kind of felt like I needed something for mom that wasn't just mom. I actually originally started with network marketing, as one usually does as a mother at home with kids, it seems. And I learned a little bit more about my grit, I guess, during that process of like what I was actually capable of, what my persistence was like, and just my willingness to do hard things. Through that, though, I was very humbled, as one usually is at some point, if not many times in their life, as the pedestal was quickly out from underneath me. And I kind of found myself in this place where I realized I was chasing dreams that I had for myself and not what God had put in my heart. And
Mm.
a lot of times I think that's what we kind of do in this world is there's a lot of shiny things out there and we like to go after them because they feel good, they look good, but they're so temporary and so fleeting. People can take them away from you as quickly as they can give it to you. I realized that. And so I had always, since I was a little girl, wanted to write. I had it. My mom keeps everything. My mother has like a basement full of my sister and I's
Ooh,
possessions.
same. Yeah.
She found a journal this last year that I had written in when I was 10, and it said, I want to be a children's author one day. And which kind of
Wow.
like gave me goosebumps when she brought it to me because I was like, this desire was planted in my heart when I was just a little girl, like,
Whoa.
and so I started trying to figure out how do I make writing something I can do. And through a process that was actually first rejection, um, I became a ghostwriter. And it was very new to me, but I was able to kind of cultivate my skills in that. And finally, one day, like 4 years into ghostwriting, I was like, I want to write for myself. And I published my first children's novel, which is not what I wanted to write, but it's where God led me. And I actually published it as like my legacy piece for my kids. And so that has been just a really fun journey, just diving into writing things that I want to see in my children's hands. And that's kind of like my focus when I'm writing. I was like, what books do I want to see out there? And then I think from that point, like, what do you want out there? You can create those things. Like, if that's something that you think is a need, you can fill that need. And I realized that as a writer, I could fill that need for my kids. And so I started writing, and it was actually last September, so not very long ago. I realized that there were no books with homeschooled main characters, not unless you like went to the pioneer days, like, which is not relatable whatsoever. And so I started writing a little series with a homeschooled main character that kind of has the Babysitter's Club feel to it. So it's very modern. It's very funny. There's a group of girls, they get together and they pray together. And it's so fun to write that because I kind of write what I wish I would have had as a child. Like that group of
Yeah.
girls that get together to talk about what's actually happening in life and then pray with one another and cultivate that relationship with Christ. And so that's what I do. We started homeschooling 4 years ago, and that has been a whole journey. We're first generation homeschoolers. Had no clue what I was doing, but just felt that pull towards having my kids home with me. And it's been such a joy to watch them grow and develop in their own giftings in God, and be part of that process, and to show them as I'm going after what I feel like God has put on my heart, that they can also go after those things that He's put on their heart as well. So that's kind of my more lengthy of story of how I got to where I am writing books, homeschooling. We live on 3 acres. We milk a cow because, why not?
As one does, right?
As one does. You start homeschooling and you have to start homesteading, right? Like,
They go hand in hand, I
they
guess.
go hand in hand.
Okay, so much goodness to unpack here. I want to first go back to one of the very first things you said, where you said, okay, sometimes we have like the dreams that we want to pursue, and then we have the dreams that God puts in our heart, as if they're
Yes.
like two different sort of things. Do you think now, having fulfilled and like stepped into this calling that you felt was like truly on your heart for so long, do you think in hindsight that that kind of always was the dream for you, that it wasn't necessarily like this separate thing, like where you were
Right.
pursuing, okay, here's what I want versus what here's what God wants, so I'm going to be obedient and do what God wants? Do you think, I guess, I don't know if that makes sense, but like, do you think
Right.
that they've kind of like merged together in
They've
time,
kind
where
of
you were like,
merged.
wait a minute, they are kind of one and the same. Like, I want this too.
Right. Exactly. And I think as we pursue being closer to God, that we understand the way that He made us, and our dreams do start to mesh with what God created us to do, because He ultimately knows exactly what we are meant to do. And
Yeah.
as we go closer to Him, we're like, hey, yeah, He's been right all along. Like, this is really what I wanted to. It's just you had to let go of some of those things that were kind of holding you back from
Yeah.
really chasing after what God has for you.
Shiny objects along the way.
Oh yes, lots of glitter out there.
Which is also cool and speaks to one of the other things you mentioned, which was rejection. Because I feel like it's a common misconception that when you start saying yes and kind of stepping into what you do feel like God is calling you to, that it will just be this like very easy path forward, or a very obvious path forward with just every door will open and like all the wrong things will shut. And it's just like, here's the yellow brick road to God's will. And I just think like, oh, how lovely that would be. But rejection is obviously a part of that story too. So how did you feel in those parts of your story when you were facing rejection, but you still also knew in your heart that this wasn't necessarily like a permanent shut door that should deter you, but rather something that you had to kind of just work through, was maybe like a not yet or a not now instead of a no with a period?
Yeah, so rejection, there have been so many aspects of rejection that I've experienced in my life, from people, from pursuing things, from myself at times. As I think that sometimes we kind of reject our own selves, that we don't think we're good enough to go forward in those things, and so we stop before we even start. And yeah, when I was rejected at first, it was kind of like, but I thought this is what I was supposed to do. And then I realized it doesn't mean that it's not what I'm not meant to do. It just might not have been the correct pathway over. I may have just made a little sidestep that was like, nope, nope, not that way. You need to go this way. And sometimes that means a season of waiting, which again is very difficult in our fast paced society that wants quick answers and results. And but seasons of waiting have been so vital to growth as well, because I think that's when we truly root into who we are in Christ and trust that He has the next step ahead. And rejection is just a way for us to kind of get back to where we need to go. And it's not, I don't look at it as a negative anymore. I'm just like, oh, okay, so that wasn't for me, but maybe it was for someone else, because a lot of times when we say yes to everything, we're like, what yeses are we saying that really aren't meant for us? They really are yeses for someone else. And we need to really listen and say the yeses that God wants us to, so other people can continue giving their best yes as well.
Oh, that's so good. Rejection is redirection. I think
Yes.
once we can get that through our brains, it becomes a lot easier to stomach because then it almost becomes kind of like, all right, we're piecing it together. We're getting a little bit, I like to think of it almost as like, I'm getting closer because that piece of rejection is getting me a little bit closer to what is not a rejection, which will be the right path forward.
Right.
So it's just a little bit of reframing,
It
but
is.
it works.
It does. It
It works
hurts in the
wonders.
moment at times because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I thought I was onto something right there. And then you're like, oh, not yet. Okay, not that way.
I think though also sometimes it's not sometimes it doesn't mean that it even is not right in that I had this happen personally. Now I have to be vague for like a whole bunch of reasons, but where it was like rejection at first, but then other things happened behind the scenes with other people and a door reopened that had
Right.
previously been closed and then became a yes.
Yes.
And it's so I think about that a lot too, because it's kind of funny. It's like at first you're like, wait, okay, rejection, move on, must not have been right. But I still felt, I was like, but that really felt right. So, like,
Yeah.
this is confusing and weird. And it turns out it wasn't necessarily me that had to do anything differently. It was like the other side had to have some
Right.
shifts happen.
Yeah.
And then it could be a yes. So it might just be like not the exact right time. Not like there's so many different circumstances
There
that could
are.
be not quite right. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his timing is always perfect timing, and we don't know what that looks like. And it's kind of just opening your hands and saying, okay, I'm trusting you. I'm doing what I feel like I'm supposed to do. And you trust that God's going to make it happen for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know obviously a big part of your story is homeschooling and homesteading.
Yes.
Um, and I believe you did not intend initially to be homeschoolers, right?
Nope.
Okay. And
No.
I feel like this is like maybe feeling a little bit trendier given society today. I feel like I'm hearing more and more people that are like, we're gonna homeschool, like, and we're gonna homestead, and we're gonna move to the middle of nowhere and do it all. But I also feel like it can be intimidating. And I'm sure we've got gals listening in who love the idea of homeschooling their kids, but just do not feel equipped to do so, or like, yeah, I couldn't do it, or who maybe think that like homesteading would be so stinking cool, but they're like, give me the chickens and the cows and a garden and a sourdough starter, but like, what on earth is the first step? Like,
Right.
or
Right.
all the steps. Someone give me a
Yeah.
rubric here. So let's start with homeschooling. We know this
Okay.
was not something you always like wanted to do or thought you would do. So how did that actually get started for you?
Yeah. So to be like, it was 2020.
Okay, say no
It
more.
was
We know exactly.
2020.
There it goes.
There it is. And we just felt like we kept referring to friends and Ross, we're pivoting, we're pivot. And we were like, this is a great opportunity to try it. I mean, we'd always said homeschoolers, like, that's not us. We are not homeschooling. That is not going to be part of our story. And that's funny because, here we
Here you
are.
are.
Um, and so yeah, 2020 happened and we started homeschooling, and I was the same. I was like, what am I doing? I don't feel qualified. I don't feel equipped. And God just kept reminding me, I equipped you from the very beginning. You are their mother. You're their very first teacher. Like, you can learn along the way and your kids are going to learn alongside you. And we started very simple. things that I knew that they needed. And then we just slowly built upon that, and also have kind of learned how to unstructure learning to the point where they get really interested about things. And we just kind of go where we feel led. Like if they're very interested in one particular subject, then we go all in on that and learn that. But it is very intimidating at first, especially if you had no idea that that's what you were going to be doing. And at the time when we started homeschooling, so there's a lot with the homeschooling piece. We were living with my in-laws and we were building our house. So, and building our
Just a
house, my
little
dad,
bit going on.
there was a lot. My dad was the general contractor. And my husband and I were actually like building the house on the weekends and in the evenings when he was off work. We were hanging sheetrock, laying flooring, doing electrical, roofing, the whole process. So we felt very stretched thin in that season. And I actually think it was good to be stretched thin in that season because it was like, okay, you can stretch and you just need to simplify. And it forced me to simplify everything. And so then by having those little baby steps where I simplified it, I became a lot more confident in homeschooling just at the very beginning. Like, okay, year one, it was super simple. Now we're going to add a little bit more on. So just being able to go back to basics. And I think that a lot in life, just in general, going back to simple and basic and not overcomplicating things because there's a million voices out there telling you how to do something. And we don't have to listen to them all. A lot of it is about quieting the noise and getting back to that simplicity and what you feel is needed in the moment.
Yeah.
So that was kind
Yeah.
of where we were at. And yeah, we're closing up on year 4 of homeschooling. And honestly, my husband and I were talking the other night. We just don't feel like we would want to do anything else now. It's part of our family.
So remind me, what are your kids' ages? And then how does this work? Like, is this you and your husband who do it? Is it primarily you, primarily him? Like, what is, and give us like a day in the life of what
Yeah.
this looks like. Cause I think you have
So
3 kiddos.
I have 3 kids and they are currently 8, 10, and 12. So we started when they were 4, 6, and 8. And I do not do science. It is not my forte whatsoever, but my husband is a science major. So
Perfect.
he does a lot of the science ended stuff, usually in the evenings or something like that. I do all the core subjects during the day. So the language arts, the math, the handwriting, the all of those fun things. I love history, so we do a lot of history. And I do that with my kids during the day. Now, my older 2 at 10 and 12, what I have loved learning is like a lot of things when they get older is kind of self-led. Because kids are amazing. I don't think we give them enough credit sometimes for how smart they are. Like when they have not been spoken over like doubts of themselves, which we're very, very we try very hard to make sure that we speak life over them always because your home is kind of your sanctuary and motherhood's a ministry and this is holy ground and it's holy work that you are doing. And they don't have a lot of doubts, and so they believe that they are so smart, and they are, and they just kind of do their own thing and they bring it to me and I'm always like, I'm not even sure I could have taught you this. Like you are so smart. And as they get older, it's become such a joy to watch them embrace that part of themselves. And so it does get, I will say there are parts that get harder when they get older in general. But with homeschooling, I feel like it actually gets more fun and easier as they get older. And so
That's, yeah.
yeah, our day is just kind of like we get up, we have a slow morning, we enjoy coffee and chores and Jesus, and we start our day slow and we get our schoolwork done. And then when dad gets home, we sometimes have a science or a Bible lesson together or something like that.
Okay. That sounds idyllic. I
Yeah.
feel like I've heard from a lot of people that homeschooling is so much more efficient than like public school or any other school option, which makes perfect sense. Cause I mean, if you're solely focused on 1 or 2 kids instead of 30, duh. But do you think what have been some of the challenges that you've kind of come up against where you were like, Has there ever been a time where you doubted, like, was this the right choice? Or what are kind of like give us like the non-glamorous side too?
Yeah,
Because
so
now I'm like, sign me up. Homeschooling sounds great.
there are hard days. I will say there will be hard days where we're just kind of more emotional and moody, and mom is about to lose her cool. And I multiple times will say, I'm gonna lose it. Like if you guys don't just sit down and do your schoolwork, I'm gonna lose it. Like, and we have
Relatable.
moments like that. Yes. And I have to check myself because I'm like, okay, do I need to go have a moment? And I actually use that as an example for my kids all the time. I'm like, are you having an emotional day? Like, are you just having an emotional day? Because it's okay if we need to take a day off because you're having an emotional day, because this is not going to work for you or me if our emotions are out of whack. And sometimes we've had those days where it's like something has happened and we're really emotional. And I'm like, we're not going to be productive today. The best thing we can do is to just be together and to snuggle up, read books, have some snacks, and just rest and like have a day. And I think that's sometimes important too, is like I always tell people, I'm like, you got to find a rhythm. It's not necessarily about, hey, we got to check all of these things off a list. You got to know your rhythm and you got to be in tune with it, because sometimes you're able to go and it's just like, oh, this is going great. This is going great. And then you have kind of a lull where you're like, oh, we've hit something and we need to slow down. And it's okay to do that because there's freedom in picking your own pace. And that's another phrase I use a lot with homeschooling moms. I say, like, be at peace with your pace, whatever that may be in this season of your life. Because sometimes you're going to be running and you're going to feel great and you're going to have a stride going. And then sometimes you need to stop and you need to walk. And it's okay either way.
Also, what a relatable phrase for just life in general.
Yeah.
Not just homeschooling, but like life.
Right. I know.
Welcome.
I know. We have construction out of town today. And I was actually thinking about that because I was like, we have to slow down to 50. And at 50 miles per hour, like you notice so many things that you don't notice. And I'm like,
Mm,
how wonderful would it be to just like be able to go a little bit slower at times? And I'm like, that we really need to honor that sometimes in our life of like, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to do less. It's okay to just like look around and see what's happening around you. And that's kind of how I hope that my kids see with homeschooling is that they were able to just feel at peace the whole entire time, whether it was a season we had a lot of things going on or a season where there wasn't as much going on.
yeah. How do you handle when you do need structure or when you need maybe some discipline, or like when it's days where it's not necessarily the emotional day, but when you say you started them at 4, I'm thinking of like my daughter who's now 5, and I'm like, holy moly, I feel like there would be times where you're just like, honey, we got to school today. Like we got to do
Yeah.
it. We cannot
Yeah.
just watch Bluey all day long. Like
Yep. Yep. And that's
we
how
got
my
to do
youngest
it.
is. She is a people person through and through. Which is a great thing. And also, um, it's also
A
one of those
hard
things where you're
thing.
like, she knows where she can manipulate people too. Like that's her strength as people. And so she's really great with interacting, but she's also great at manipulating me as well. And I have to watch that. I'm like, okay, she's getting out of schoolwork today. Like we need to wrap this in. And so, yeah, she is not a very structured, she's very free spirited. And so a lot of times I have to put stipulations of like, hey, you can't go outside again because she will just go outside and I won't see her. And, she escaped and that was her plan. I said, you can't go outside again until we get our math done. And she's like, okay. And she'll go and get her math out and she'll do it. And then she's all excited because she gets it done. But my middle child, she is a little bit more structured. She likes a planner. So not all my kids love planners. My oldest does not, but my oldest daughter does. And so she loves checking things off. Like if she knows she can check things off, then she's happy. And I've noticed that there are just some kids that are geared that way. They love to do lists. They love to check things off. It makes them feel productive. And then you've got the other part where it's my other daughter where she's like, I don't care about those lists. I don't care if I check anything off. I just want to go live my life. Like, and so I've got to reel that in sometimes with her. But yeah, that part can be really hard. But with the younger ages, I feel like there's not as much to do. They're really not doing as much schoolwork. Like her schoolwork is maybe an hour a day if she would actually sit down and do it. at that age. And so it's like once she can get it done and she realizes that, then she's like, I'm free for the day. And I'm like, yes, you are. Awesome. You can go play your Barbies and run outside and do whatever you want to.
That's wild. Also, when you think about how much learning is condensed like that, and you're like, what is that child
Yes.
doing in school all day? Yikes.
Yes. Yes. I know. Like when we started that and it was like, well, here's the subjects and all of this. And I'm like, this is not really that much for that age. But
Hmm.
she is like, she loves to learn. And I think that too is like, she isn't having to learn all day long. And so she loves learning just in general.
That's cool. What kind of rhythm then have you found you need to do or that you help other women do when there are multiple kids at multiple age levels? Because obviously what they're learning is going to be different.
Right.
So then how do you kind of have a rhythm for yourself as the teacher in terms of like, okay, now we're doing like, I don't know, first grade spelling, and now we're going to switch to like eighth grade history. I feel like that's such a mental jump for you too as the teacher.
Right. And it can be. And so I kind of prepare myself. My oldest two know that school is done by 1 o'clock. So they have me available to them until 1 o'clock because I'm a from home homeschooling mom. So in the afternoons, I've got to have my work time. And so I really concentrate on my youngest and getting her stuff in. And then as they need me, my oldest two, they're like, hey, is this a good time for me to bring up my spelling words? And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's a great time. And so they'll come do that and they'll do their spelling. And they've kind of learned that this mom has a window. And that's when I'm kind of just my brain is focused on, okay, I am schooling them. This is what we're doing. And yeah, there's a flip between like the different subjects. But when that's all I'm doing, it's pretty easy to stay focused on it. And then once 1 o'clock hits, I'm like, if you didn't get it in, then you just got extra work tomorrow, which my oldest two do not like. So they make sure they come find me.
So then how does this work in terms of things like I've heard of like homeschooling co-ops and things where because then kids go, okay, you don't want to be, I think of the scene from Mean Girls when they're like, she's like the homeschooled jungle freak. Like they
Right.
people just have this stereotype of like, okay, you're homeschooled, that means you grew up in a cave and have not socialized and whatever. So I'm obviously that's not reality today. What kind of support is in place or like things, opportunities that allow you to kind of also have socialization, also have like extracurriculars, all of those other kind of enriching things that are make for the more holistic school experience.
Right. So we are part of a co-op and we only meet on Friday mornings. And so I actually taught all the moms teach different classes and we kind of sign up and figure out what our schedule is going to look like. And I taught creative writing for older kids and I taught a little mini scrapbooking class for first and second grade, which is like the best little thing when they're loving all the little stickers and it's great. But so we go to that on Fridays and it just wrapped up today. My girls are in dance, so they absolutely love dance and dedicate a lot of time practicing at home too, which has been fun to see. My son does youth group, and so that's kind of like where he goes. But my kids are usually out and about all the time. Like when we go places, they are talking and having full blown conversations with adults that I'm like, I don't think I could have done that as a child. But that's their opportunity to talk to people. And so they're having conversations out there with just anybody. And I'm like, I'm intimidated by thinking about that. Just like they're asking them all sorts of questions and they just go with it. But our big thing with activities, because it's another thing with slowing down and finding your rhythm and peace with your pace and everything, is not saying yes to everything. Because I think as adults, I don't know, I'm 34. So I remember in school, it was like, you said yes to everything. You did everything. And as an adult now, you like are having to unlearn that constantly of like, I can't do everything. I'm not made to do everything. And so with our kids, we talk about that and we say, hey, like, what are you interested in this season? And I was like, because we're not going to do everything. We're not signing up for everything. We are just going to really be intentional with our time. And if that's what you want to do, then that's what they do. And so um, they really go after the things that they are excited about really hard and practice a lot. And it's really fun to see that because the girls are just like thriving in dance. And my son, is a guitarist, which we had no clue until we started homeschooling. And he like picked up a guitar and can play by ear. And it's been absolutely insane to watch his growth. And so he is just obsessed with music. And that's been really fun to watch. So he's all about his guitar, and it's nice to know that they have passions, but that they're very directed and that they can really focus on them. And so I feel like they're pretty well rounded. They're very confident in what they're doing because they don't feel stretched thin. And that's been one of the big things that as an adult, I'm like, I had to unlearn all these things. How can I not burden my children in a way that makes them have to unlearn things as adults?
So good and so wise of you as a mom also.
Yeah,
As all of us millennial moms are like in
right?
therapy trying to
Oh,
undo all of our whatever.
the people pleasing aspect. Like I
Yeah.
am a recovering people pleaser, and I know that's because I would not say no to anything. And a couple years ago, my oldest daughter, she said, "Would you be disappointed if I didn't like something?" And she was talking about sports because she does not like sports at all. And I said, "Honey," I was like, "I would never be disappointed in you for not liking something. I would be disappointed in myself as your mother for you feeling like you had to do something just to make me happy."
Oh, so good. Yeah. Okay, switching gears slightly, talking
Yes.
homesteading.
Yes.
For anyone who is new to the term, or you're like, what is this? Is this like pioneer woman and like churning butter?
Right.
Tell us what this is in a nutshell. And what is the process of like creating and building and sustaining a homestead logistically? Like, do you need to be Paul Bunyan to do this, or is this kind of like anyone can do it if you have a dream in your heart and you want a homestead? Give us the lowdown.
Right. So, homesteading, I like to think about it as getting back to your roots. So, whatever that feels like and looks like for you, it doesn't necessarily have to be like get the milk cow. It could be just baking bread. It could be starting a little garden. Our homesteading journey is not the typical one because I literally bought a milk cow in the process of building our house, and then was like, "Hey, we need to build a barn and a fence because I just bought a milk cow." And no, usually people do not jump in with the cow,
Working backward. Yeah.
right? I was working backwards. And but that was really, I felt like the milk cow was important to me for some reason. I'm like, I know we could do gardens and we could do chickens at first, but like I really want a milk cow. And so we had no idea what we were doing. We didn't grow up on farms. We've never owned livestock. It was a whole experience, and we've grown a lot through it. But
Did you just think the
um,
cow was cute? Were you
oh, the
like,
cow
this is a
is so
cute?
cute. And like again, we were building our house and it was like 2021. And I was like, I feel like I need a friend outside of my house that I can just go hug, you
No, but
know?
you could have gotten a puppy. You could
I
have
could
gotten a
have, but I
puppy
didn't.
because you
I
got
got
a
a
milk
cow.
cow.
I got a cow. And so she has been great. I mean, our milk cow's name is Pumpkin. And we love her so much. She is a family cow through and through. She is right outside my window. Like she's right there. Like but as far as like a homesteading in general, I think it's really just figure out what is your main goal. Like, do you want to grow food? And what does that look like? Are you wanting to grow vegetables? Because we have yet to start our garden. This is our garden year. We have not jumped in with it yet. We have a milk cow, we have chickens, we have pigs. We have a mini cow, which she's adorable. But we kind of just jumped in with the animals first because that's where our interest was at first. And our kids have loved it. I mean, what kid doesn't love to be around farm animals? And so that was it's been a crazy, crazy journey, and I'm really excited to see how it grows as we continue to dive into new things. But for us, it was just like the animals are important to us, and we wanted to have those animals around for our kids to experience them because I feel like there is some value in kids growing up around larger animals and learning how to not be freaked out when they see a cow, you know. Because I've had that happen. Like, is she going to like do something to me? I'm like, she's not going to go through the fence and get you. I promise. Like, you're good. You're good. So yeah, it's been a journey, and to anybody who ever starts, I'm like, just start. Like wherever you want to start, just start there and don't overwhelm yourself. Like, yes, it was a little overwhelming going straight in with the milk cow, but we learned the milk cow first and didn't really add too much on from there. It's like start with one thing that you really feel passionate about and then add things on as it goes. Because if you're not passionate about what you start with, like if somebody's like, a garden's your best start, but you're like, I don't really want to grow a tomato. That doesn't sound fun to me. You're not going to continue doing it.
Okay, so what's the difference then between um just like gardening? Like we have a thriving garden every year. Does this
Right?
mean we're homesteading? Like
Right. Well,
what's the difference between like gardening versus homesteading versus like full on farming? How
right.
would you differentiate?
So I know I feel like gardening these days, everybody kind of like puts it into the homesteading category anymore because it's like not a lot of people do it. And when they start it, it's a big deal. It's a big
Yeah.
deal to have a garden. And it is hard work. But a farm, I would say you are running a business as a family. Our intention is for our family to benefit from the nourishment from the animals that we have. So we've got milk and we have eggs and we raise pigs. So we benefit from that nourishment. We do not outsource a lot of it. If we have excess something, then we give it to others and all of that. But um it's for us. Like it's for our home. So that's kind of how I'm like homesteading, it's all about the home, where a farm is you're trying to make a business work, which is great. All the power to the people who can do that. It's a lot of work. But and then yeah, gardening, I'm like, I feel like that kind of coming into the homesteading because it's about home again, everything just around the home.
Yeah. I always feel like I see people talking about homesteading and they automatically have chickens. So I feel like in my
Yes.
head, I'm like, I can't call myself a homesteader
Until
until
you
I ever got a chicken coop. But I just picture myself with a chicken coop and I'm like, there ain't no way. Like
there's no way.
how on earth would I do that?
Yeah, yeah. Those chickens, I am not a chicken person, but I sure like the eggs. I'm always like, the kids can take care of them and I just want to benefit.
Yeah. So do you have a rooster also?
We do not. We had one at one time and it was actually supposed to be a female, so his name was Black Betty. It was very confusing. And so we had Black Betty the rooster, and he was not nice, and he had to go to chicken heaven very quickly. So
Yikes.
yeah.
Yikes. I've heard that with chickens and having a chicken coop, you need to have something to protect them from like
Right.
coyotes and stuff. So what is your protective,
We
your
honestly,
guardian of the chickens?
we have never lost a chicken to predators, and we
Really?
have
Oh,
never
so
had a
yours don't have a protector. Oh goodness.
nope.
Don't tell the coyotes that.
Yeah, no protector. We've had foxes run across. We actually had a baby fox once fall into one of our window wells, and my husband rescued it. And I really like, we joke all the time. I think we made peace with the foxes, and they know
Oh,
we saved them, and so they don't come here. But we've never had a predator, which is really weird. But we also have a pretty secure coop, but they do free range during the day, and so I've just been really surprised we have not lost any. But they're just happy, I guess.
that's fantastic. Oh my goodness. So then in incorporating that with homeschooling, do your kids also help out with all of the homesteading stuff and like
Oh,
how
yes.
what's kind of the breakdown of that? Because it sounds like I'm sure your kids are obviously so well-rounded, but like that also teaches so much good responsibility from such a young age of like, all right, we're like kind of working on the farm, but not on the farm, obviously.
Right.
But
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of personal responsibility for them, which is great. And so my husband, which is hilarious because I wanted the milk cow and I thought I would milk the cow, but he milks the cow. And he loves it. He's like, that's my time when I go out there and milk her and I just pray over the day and over my family and everything because it's like
aw.
his time in the morning. But my son's in charge of cleaning up like the milk machine and all of that. And he's in charge of the pigs. We call him the pig man because he is in charge of everything over there. And then the girls are really in charge of the chickens and they're now in charge of washing milk jars. Nobody ever told me how many milk jars you would have from having a milk cow. It's an obscene amount of milk jars. And so they are having to wash the milk jars. And so yeah, and then like cleaning the pastures and yeah, there's just a lot of work ethic that has been built into them in the last few years because it's like this is not an option. Like, in order to take care of our animals, we have to do it. It's not an option. You have to do it. And now they do so. At first it was fun at first, right? Because anything new is fun. And then it became, I don't really want to do that. And now they've learned, because we talk about Joseph all the time and how he was a helper with a happy heart, even in his horrible circumstances. And so there was like, okay, I'm going to choose to have a happy heart. And I was like, okay, that's what you need to do. That'll just make it go a lot easier for all of us.
Okay, elaborate on this a little bit just for anyone. If anyone's listening and they're like, wait, this sounds good, but I want to know more. Give us like the version that you shared with your kids to teach that story so that they could also
Yeah.
be like, okay, I want a happy heart too. And like I can take that attitude. It reminds me of like my daughter used to watch Mickey Mouse, Minnie's Bow Tunes on like Disney
Yes.
with Mickey Mouse. And it would always be like, be a happy helper. So like that
Right.
worked so far. But now that she's out of that stage, I'm like, I wanted to
Right.
transition her to like some other deeper
Right.
be a helper with a happy heart stories.
So we went through the story of Joseph at the very beginning of our homeschooling. Like, that was one of our first biblical lessons. And we talked through about how his brothers sold him into slavery, and that was not his choice. And yet he continued to work happy for anybody that he had to. And it always helped him gain up in rank. And then, of course, he was back into jail. And I said, see, and through all of his circumstances, good and bad, because it was not good for the most part, he was always happy and always helpful because he knew that God had a plan. He was a dreamer, and he knew that God had a plan for his life. And I said, and I told him, I said, the thing is like, not everything in life is ever going to be easy. In fact, if it's easy, that should probably be a red flag. Like, if it was that easy, like, we should have to go through a little bit of hard circumstances to refine us as Christians. And so that helps us choose to have joy in all of our circumstances, even when we don't like them. And so I would tell them the story all the time about, Joseph always had a happy heart, and he always worked his best, even when horrible things happened to him. And they would always be like, well, at least we're not sold into slavery. Like, so that was kind of their thing. And it was always funny. But yeah, just reiterating on that story all the time. And so now all the time when we're doing things, they're like, gotta have a happy heart like Joseph. And it's kind of like I don't really want to, but I'm going to choose to. And then once they have that in their head, I watch them as they're doing chores, and you can tell they start to smile and they start to have fun in it. Because at first it was begrudgingly of like, I'm going to have a happy heart because I know that's what I'm supposed to do and that's what God wants me to do. But as we choose that, even in just our lives in general, like, as we choose that, we do find joy in doing the things, even when they're hard.
And it helps too because there's the circumstances in life that we don't like and shouldn't like because they should change. But then there's the circumstances in life that we don't love but like are just a part of life. Like welcome
Yeah,
to being an adult and doing
exactly.
laundry and doing dishes. Like no one's jumping up and down like sign me up to vacuum every
Right.
day. Like that's just a part of it. And then there's the stuff that obviously we get to do, we love, whatever. So it's like finding that balance in terms of how can you just carry yourself day to day and what perspective can you take and where can you shift your sight so that you are seeing the good even when it's not feeling good and still
Mhm.
discerning when it's something that you shouldn't just put up with but should try to change in
Right.
some way. It's like that's all just part of the wonderful journey that is
It
called
is.
life.
It is. It is. And it's not always fun. And that's what I always tell them. I was like, life is not always going to be fun. Like, that's not gonna happen ever. Nobody's ever gonna have 100% fun life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. Well, even though life is not always fun, we do like to think that we can thrive and like have the
Oh,
end goal of like we're still going to be trying to be thriving through it all. So I like to get things wrapped up by asking a fun little question of everybody, which is what does thrive mean to you and how do you strive to thrive in your everyday life?
I think for me, thriving means being at peace and at joy in my life every single day, and finding that peace and joy in whatever has happened. I have a sign up in my house, and it says that, it's not about perfection. It's about showing up and just being there and being present. And um, at the end of the day, my family, we play Yahtzee every single night. That is our thing. We play Yahtzee after dinner. That is just what we do. And we go around and we pray first over our day, like what we were thankful for. And sitting there when I'm with my family, I'm always like, okay, today might have been a hard day, but here we are together and we are choosing the good things that God has put in our life. And we are thriving in that because of a God who is so caring for us to give us the opportunities that we need right now in this moment in our life. And whether they are something that we are truly enjoying or not, we know that there is a greater plan than we could ever plan out for ourselves. And so thriving for me is just having that peace and knowing that God's got everything figured out for us. And we can choose to enjoy every single day because we don't have to know everything. And that takes so much pressure off of life in general. It's like, I don't have to know, I just have to know who does. And that is, for me, that's thriving. That's when, at the end of the day, when I know that we are just at peace with where God has us right now, we are thriving in our life.
That's so good. Ah, Shelby, thank you so much. Tell everybody where they can find you online to connect with you more. And also, we'll put it in the show notes, all of the links to all of your books, but tell everyone where they can grab copies of your books as well.
Yeah, so I have my own website. It's www.shelbeykendall.com. All my books are on there, which they're also on Amazon. And then my Instagram handle is Shelbey Kendall Author. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Wait, before you go, make sure you're subscribed to never miss an episode of Thrive. Drop 5 stars on your way out if you like what you just listened to, and come join the party on Instagram at thrive.podcast to stay inspired and thriving all week long. Thanks for tuning in. It's your time to thrive.